Live stream is up. Sergeants, can you start your recordings?
PC recording is up.
Cloud has started. Good morning, and welcome to today's remote New York City Council hearing of the Subcommittee on Zoning and Franchises. At this time, would council staff please turn on their video? Please place electronic devices on vibrate or silent. If you wish to submit testimony, you may do so at landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. That is landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. Thank you. Chair, we are ready to begin.
Good morning and welcome to a meeting of the Subcommittee of Zoning and Franchises. I am Councilmember Kevin Riley, Chair of the Subcommittee. This morning, I am joined remotely by Council Members Shulman, Nurse, Barron, Moya, Botcher, Vernikov, Abreu, Carr, Lewis, Ressler, Hanks, Majority Whip Brooks Powers. Today, we will vote on the 4 rezoning proposals in Brooklyn for 1034, 1042 Atlantic Avenue, 870, 888 Atlantic Avenue, 1377 Sutter Avenue, and 3285 Fulton Street that we heard by the subcommittee on March 8th and March 21st, and the whole public hearings on the rezoning proposals for 1220 Avenue P and 103 Lee Avenue in Brooklyn.
Can I just interrupt you for just 1 second? Just to let you all know that we're not voting on the Atlantic Avenue projects. We're laying them over, but it's later on in your remarks, Chair.
Thank you, Council. Our Lady of Pity at 272 East 151st Street in the Bronx and 146-93 Guy R. Brewer Boulevard in Queens. Before we begin, I recognize the Subcommittee Council to review the hearing procedures.
Thank you, Chair Riley, and sorry about the confusion earlier. I am Angelina Martinez, Review Counsel to the Subcommittee. Members of the public wishing to testify were asked to register for today's hearings. If you wish to testify and have not already registered, please do so now by visiting the New York City Council website at www.council.nyc.gov/land use to sign up. Members of the public may also view a live stream broadcast of this meeting at the Council's website. If you need an accessible version of any of the presentations shown today, please send an email request to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. When called to testify, individuals appearing before the subcommittee will remain muted until recognized by the chair to speak. Applicant teams will be recognized as a group and called first, followed by members of the public. When the chair recognizes you, your microphone will be unmuted. Please take a moment to check your device and confirm that your mic is on before you begin speaking. Public testimony will be limited to 2 minutes per witness. If you have additional testimony you would like the subcommittee to consider, if you have written testimony you would like to submit instead of appearing here before the subcommittee, you may email it to, again, landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. Please indicate the LU number and or project name in the subject line of your email. During the hearing, council members with questions should use the Zoom raise hand function, which appears at the bottom of either your participant panel or the primary viewing window. Council members with questions will be announced in the order as they raise their hands, and Chair Riley will then recognize members to speak. Witnesses are requested to remain in the meeting until excused by the chair, as council members may have questions. Finally, there may be pauses over the course of this meeting for various technical reasons, and we ask that you please be patient as we work through any issues. And just a quick reminder for the council members, we're going to be controlling your mics. And now Chair Riley will now continue with today's agenda items.
Thank you, Council. Before I talk about what we are voting on today, I just want to note that we will be laying over LUs 20, 21, and 22 related to the 1034-1042 Atlantic Avenue rezoning proposal, and LUs 23, 24, and 25 relating to the 870, 888 Atlantic Avenue rezoning proposal, both in Councilmember Hudson's district in Brooklyn. Now for our votes today. Today, we will vote to approve with modifications pre-considers LUs 29 and 30 relating to the 1377 Sutter Avenue rezoning in Councilmember Barron's district in Brooklyn. The proposal will rezone an R5 district to an R6A/C2-4 district and establish an MIH program area utilizing option 1 and 2. Our modification will reduce the proposal rezoning area by excluding portions of the Sutter Avenue frontage and making a corresponding reduction to the proposed MIH area while also striking the MIH option 2 and adding the deep affordability option while retaining option 1. These modifications would allow the creation of a new 100% affordable housing development through MIH that otherwise would not be able to be developed on this site, and balance new growth with protecting existing residents from displacement. Land use patterns in the immediate surrounding areas are reflected by lower scale attached and semi-detached residential buildings, generally with 2 or 3 stories. On the other hand, R6A districts, which allow development up to 85 feet in height and up to a maximum FAR of 3.6, are significantly higher in density. And upzoning to this degree could result in displacement of existing residents without the protection of rent regulations. Reducing the rezoning area with our modification is an attempt to balance encouraging new residential development with MIH while addressing the citywide need for additional affordable housing and preserving the established character of this area. Councilmember Barron is in support of this proposed as modified, and I would like to recognize Councilmember Barron to give any remarks regarding this project. Councilmember Barron, good morning.
Thank you very much. You read it well. You said a lot that I'm going to say, but I just wanted to encourage my colleagues that when they say no, you say no until you get a yes on what affordability is for your area. This is 100% affordable. And we made sure also when you're doing this zoning stuff, it's just for that project, not for the whole block or blocks after that. So want to make sure when you're doing your projects, don't let them add on anything else but that particular project. So we went from 70% of the AMI, which you know the AMI now is $104,000 for a family of 3, and then sometimes it's 107 and so on and so forth. But so 70 and 80% of that is like $80,000. Our neighborhood AMI, if any developer doesn't know your neighborhood AMI and they just give you HUD's affordability, cancel the meeting, tell them the meeting is terminated until they come back and respect you and tell you what your neighborhood AMI is. Our neighborhood AMI is $36,000, $37,000 for a family of 3. We were able to get these 28 units that would have been not affordable to us to affordability as we define affordability. And that is 30 to 60% of the AMI. So 3 of the apartments will be for the homeless. Another 3 will be for the extremely low income. So that's 6. Then we got 14 of the 28s. With that 6, it'll be 20. 20 of the 28 apartments are 60% and below, down to 30% and with homeless. And that is our range of affordability. And then we know we do have some of our people that are teachers or sanitation workers that do make $60,000 and $70,000. So we left 8 units for those in our community that do make 60, 70, and 80,000, because sometimes those are the people that are hit hardest because they're not making enough not to get these breaks and they can't get the break. So this is 100% affordable according to the income band of our neighborhood. And they're not displacing the commercial businesses below it on the ground level. They're negotiating with them. Most of them will come back. There's one project that they're negotiating with to see how that could happen. But this is 100% affordable, and they was only going to do it for like 30 years. You should always try to get perpetuity, affordability forever. But if you can't, get at least 60 years. So this project will be 60 years in affordability. And then we putting some clause in there where it'll be in their benefit to re-up for another 60 after the 60 years is gone. So if they think because I'm 70 years old that I'll be gone by then, I plan on living to at least 200. So when 60 plus 70 is 150, I'll still be 150 years old and on their case. I thank my colleagues. I support this project 100%.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Barron. We will also vote to approve with modification pre-considered LUs 32 and 33 for the 3285 Fulton Street rezoning proposal relating to property in Councilmember Nurse District. The proposal will reduce an existing commercial overlay district boundary, rezone an R5/C2-3 district to an R7A/C2-4 district and establish an MIH program area utilizing option 1 and 2. Our modification will be to decrease the proposed rezoning area by excluding portions of the Fulton Street frontage. Accordingly, we will also modify the proposed zoning text amendment so that the proposed MIH area is consistent with our modified rezoning area. We will also modify the MIH options by striking option 2 and adding the deep affordability option while retaining option 1. In addition, we will remove the proposed special enhanced commercial district. With these modifications, we are allowing the creation of a new 100% affordable housing development through MIH that otherwise would not be able to be developed on these blocks and balance new growth with protecting existing residents from displacement. Land use patterns in the immediate surrounding areas are reflected by primarily lower scale 2-story townhouses on the north-south side streets and mixed use 3-story row houses with ground floor commercial along Fulton Street. In contrast, R7A districts allow development up to 95 feet in height and up to a maximum residential FAR of 4.6. These bulk rules are significantly more permissive and higher in density than the prevailing built character. Thus, while not the intent, this upcoming could result in displacement of existing residents without the protection of rent regulations. By modifying to limit the boundaries of the rezoning area, we aim to strike a balance between encouraging new residential development with MIH to address the citywide need for affordable housing and preserving the established character of this area. Councilmember Nurse is in support of this proposal as modified. I would like to allow Councilmember Nurse to give any remarks regarding this project. Good morning, Councilmember Nurse.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Also just wanted to acknowledge the tragic events that are happening this morning. It's been a really rough morning for our Councilmember Alexa Aviles, who's out on the streets right now supporting her community. So I just hope we're thinking about her today. But thank you, Chair. A few weeks ago, I attended this subcommittee meeting and I had expressed support for the childcare and senior housing space, but I was really concerned about the unit sizes for the senior and the much greater rezoning footprint, which just seemed unnecessarily to upzone the entire rest of the block and would not include mandatory inclusionary housing. It would likely increase speculative pressure on the block and surrounding area, which is quite frankly already been fully upzoned from the East New York rezoning. So therefore, in my mind, there really was no rationale for rezoning this entire block. I do want to thank Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso and the Land Use Office for working with us over the last few weeks to come up with a good solution, and also with the applicants, Manny and Cypress Hills LDC. We really wanted to make this work. We know that it would result in much needed senior housing and much needed affordable childcare but we didn't agree with having the entire block moved up to R7A, particularly because almost all of those tenants and apartments were unregulated apartments. So just want to thank those offices for being real partners in this process, and especially for me doing a first time land use rezoning. It was really, really heartening to see that we could actually significantly reduce that footprint. So I really believe that with these amendments, we're in a good place and we're able to protect those tenants that are unregulated. And so I just want to really express my full support for this project with these amendments. And thank you, Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Councilmember Nursen. Just want to echo your sentiments of the tragic events that happened this morning in Sunset Park. I want to send our prayers to our colleague, Councilmember Vilas, and the community in that area. Thank you. Members of the subcommittee who have questions or remarks today, or excuse me, or remarks about today's items should use the raise hand button now. Council will announce members in that order that hands are raised. Council, are there any council member with questions or remarks at this time?
Councilmember Barron has his hand up at this time.
Councilmember Barron?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, also express my concerns about the shooting as well. It's really something that we as a council have to address beyond policing. And this is the problem when you just focus on policing and not on other issues. And then secondly, I don't want y'all, I think I'm getting so old that I forgot how to do math. 70 plus 60 is not 150, it's 130. So I'll be living to 130, and then I'll check them back then. So I just wanted to make that mathematical correction.
Thank you, Councilmember Barron. Council, are there any more council members with questions at this time?
Not at this time.
Thank you, Council. I now call for a vote to approve with modifications as I have described. Pre-considers LUs 29 and 30 relating to the 1377 Sutter Avenue rezoning proposal, and pre-considers LUs 32 and 33 relating to the 3285 Fulton Avenue rezoning proposal. Council, please call the roll.
Chair Riley.
Aye on all.
Councilmember Moya.
I vote aye.
Councilmember Lewis.
Permission to explain my vote.
Permission granted.
Thank you, Chair Riley. I also want to express my sympathy, my prayers with Councilmember Aviles and her community today. I know that we'll all be in touch with her. I did have concerns about Fulton Street, but I want to thank Councilmember Nurse for her staunch advocacy and for fighting hard, as well as Councilmember Barron for always leading the way in housing justice. So I look forward to these long-term efforts for housing justice for our New Yorkers. And with that, I vote aye on all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Lewis. Councilmember Abreu. Sorry, Councilmember, you didn't come through. Can you tell me your vote again? Oh,
Aye on all.
thank you. Councilmember Botcher.
Aye on all.
Councilmember Hanks.
Aye on all.
Councilmember Schulman.
Aye on all.
And Councilmember Carr.
Aye on all.
Thank you. By a vote of 8 in the affirmative, no negatives, no abstentions, the items are approved and referred to the full Land Use Committee.
Thank you, Council. To continue with today's meeting, I will now open the public hearing on pre-considers LUs related to the ULURP, number C210321 ZMX and N210322 ZRX relating to the Our Lady of Pity, 272 East 151st Street rezoning proposal in Chair Salamanca's district in the Bronx. This application seeks a zoning map amendment to rezone an existing R6 to R7A and a related zoning text amendment to establish an MIH program area For anyone wishing to testify on this item, if you have not already done so, you must register online, and you may do that now by visiting the council's website at council.nyc.gov/land use. Council, is Chair Salamanca available for his remarks?
Chair Salamanca could not make it this morning, so we can just proceed to calling the applicant.
Thank you, Council. Council, please call the first panel for this item.
The applicant panel for this item includes, and I apologize if I mispronounce your names, Nicole Vlado, Susan Albrecht, Drew Curiosities, and Eric Bath.
Council, please administer the affirmation.
I will call on each of you individually. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before the subcommittee and in your answer to all council member questions? Nicole Blotto. Eric Bath.
I do.
Drew Curiosities.
I do.
And Susan Albrecht.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. For the benefit of the viewing public, if you need an accessible version of this presentation, please send an email request to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. Once again, that's landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. And now the applicant team may begin. Panelists, as you begin, I'll just ask that you please reinstate your name and organization for the record. You may begin.
Good morning, council members, staff. My name is Eric Vath of Goldman and Harris. I represent Catholic Homes New York. They're an affiliate of the applicant and developer of the proposed project. I'm joined by fellow presenters Nicole Vlado. She's the principal of Shakespeare Gordon Vlado Architects. And I'm also joined by Susan Albrecht, Executive Director of Catholic Homes New York, and Drew Curiosities, Associate Director of Catholic Homes New York. Before you this morning is an application for the rezoning in connection with the development of 100% affordable Our Lady of Pity apartments. And this is at the site of the former Our Lady of Pity Parish in the Melrose neighborhood of the Bronx. The church was deconsecrated in 2017 and fully demolished as of 2021. Next slide, please. I'd like to introduce Susan Albrecht, Executive Director of Catholic Homes New York, to talk about her organization.
Thank you, Eric. As we mentioned, I and my colleague Drew Curiosities will be overseeing the development of this project. Catholic Homes New York is the housing affiliate for Catholic Charities in the Archdiocese. Our mission is to develop and provide safe, affordable housing for families and seniors and people with special needs, based on our belief that having a home is a sacred human right. Our housing portfolio currently includes 14 projects with over 2,900 units of affordable housing for families and seniors. This is an illustration of 3 recently completed projects in the Bronx. The one on the left is located at West Farms, 319 units of affordable housing. The one in the middle is located on the site of the former St. Augustine Church in Morsani with 112 units. And the one on the right is the St. Vincent de Paul Senior Housing with 89 units. Eric, next.
Thank you. I'd like to walk through the proposed rezoning. On the left is the existing zoning map. You'll note in the shade of red the existing R6 zoning. Within 100 feet of Morris Avenue, there is a C14 commercial overlay. On the right is the proposed zoning district in R7A, which will maintain the C14 overlay within 100 feet of Morris Avenue. The R7A is consistent with the surrounding R71, R72, and C44, which is a R72 equivalent zoning district. Next slide, please. And with this slide, I'd like to segue over to,
That jumped ahead a bunch of slides.
yeah, it looks like we might have jumped ahead.
Go to slide 3.
Apologies for that. Okay, great. Yeah, if we could go back to the transit map, that would be terrific. One more slide. Perfect, thank you. This site is located in a transit zone, a transit-rich area, which is proximate to bus, subway, and commuter rail lines. The 245 subway runs along 149th Street. The BX32 bus runs along Morris Avenue, and the BX2, 9, and 19 are on 149th Street. There is also a Metro North station approximately 4 blocks north of the site. Next slide, please. And with this, I'd like to introduce Nicole Vlado with Shakespeare Gordon Vlado Architects to discuss the design of the buildings.
Thanks, Eric, and good morning. Again, Shakespeare Gordon Vlado is a woman-owned architecture firm. We're based in Brooklyn, and we have a practice that's rooted in providing, and sustaining affordable housing in the city. And we're very grateful to be a part of this project and for your time this morning. I'll briefly describe the architectural design of the project. The 2 interior lots sit back to back with a shared yard. On each site, we propose a new as-of-right 9-story building that's compliant with the proposed R7A zoning. The 2 buildings are designed with strong architectural relationship to one another using the same materials, colors, and features. The north building, which is located at East 151st Street, uses a light-colored brick at the front and dark at the setback and rear, while the south building inverts this palette to bring the dark brick to the front and light-colored brick to the back and setback. You'll be able to see this more clearly on the next slide. Next. Great, thank you. The use of contrasting bricks serves to minimize the appearance of the bulk of these 2 buildings, which we also achieve by stepping down the front volumes and breaking the building into bays to respect the neighbors to the east and west. We also use dormers to minimize their bulk and individually punched windows to reference our historic neighbors. The buildings will conform to the latest energy code and Enterprise Green Communities criteria and will be strong candidates for solar design. And in support of the city's mission towards carbon neutrality, the owner has expressed an interest in an all-electric approach for both buildings. Combined, the 2 buildings will introduce 188 to 202 new affordable apartments, including a range of studios, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. Next slide, please. In addition to their shared palette, as I mentioned earlier, the rear yard of the north and south buildings connect. This unique condition of our site allows these yards to be combined and create a very special and large outdoor space that is a strong focal point for our project. The outdoor space will include shared yard for tenants old and young and include dedicated areas for group activities, gatherings, quiet contemplation, and of course, areas for children's play. As per the community and council members' feedback, we have also integrated 14 at-grade parking spaces on a portion of the yard, which you can see in gray on this plan. This lot is accessible via an existing curb cut at East 150th Street and through the south building, as you can see with the dashes indicated on the lower right. Next slide. As was requested during certification, we've included illustrative floor plans as part of our presentation. Here we see typical residential floor plans showing the proposed mix, again, of studios, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. The units are designed for families and will have state-of-the-art security, ample storage and closet space, large windows to bring in views, light, and air. Again, the goal of the project is not only to provide much needed affordable housing for families to the community, but also to create a welcoming and safe space, encouraging the health and wellness of its tenants and the neighborhood at large. So if we go to the next slide, I'll pass the presentation on to Susan, who will speak more about the services that will be provided.
Thanks, Nicole. As the team mentioned, our goal is to provide the highest quality affordable housing in a welcoming environment. Again, units are designed for families with state-of-the-art security, ample storage and closets, light-filled apartments with large windows. And actually the 2 photographs on the left are from our other development at St. Augustine. So it gives you an illustration of kind of work that we do. together with open space for recreation and multi-purpose community rooms. Next slide. As a mission-driven, affordable housing developer and provider, a central component of all our housing is its connection to services, and the services are Catholic Charities. The Catholic Charities Housing Support Services Program provides on-site support services and community engagement activities to the individuals and families who live in our buildings to help them thrive in their apartments. In addition to on-site case management services, the program includes a wide range of programs to assist with employment and job training, emergency food distribution, financial literacy, and health programs, including on-site vaccination programs. We look forward to continuing this program at the new Our Lady of Pity Apartments. On behalf of Catholic Charities and Catholic Homes, I'd like to thank the committee for your consideration and ask for your support for our plans to rezone this site for 100% affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you
Next.
so much.
I think we just have one last slide.
Oh, I'm so
Yeah, it's
sorry.
okay. No, it's just that. That's it. Right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I just have a couple of questions and let me just, okay, I just have a couple of questions. I'm gonna see if my colleagues have any questions. Given community board one's concerns regarding overdevelopment in the surrounding South Bronx area, can you provide some additional insight into the wraparound services you hope to provide to tenants at this building, as well as the common indoor and outdoor spaces that are being created with this development?
Sure. If you go back, yeah, I don't know if we need to go back to the slides, but as mentioned in the final slide, we will have on-site services. That's part of all of the housing that we provide that has the housing support services program. And again, as I mentioned, it was case management and so forth. When it comes to the public spaces, I don't know, Nicole, you want to talk a little bit about that? We know that one of the concerns with the community board was parking, which is what we added to this proposal. Although it's in a transit zone and no parking is required, we did accommodate those spaces as illustrated in the slide earlier.
And just to elaborate on that, again, the exterior recreation space will provide a series of different types of outdoor spaces for the tenants to use. In addition to that, the ground floor of the south building will also include amenities for the tenants, which will include offices for services that will be provided, as well as areas for tenants to congregate indoors as well as outdoors.
Thank you. My last question is, with the solution you presented, do you feel your team has adequately addressed the concerns regarding traffic and parking availability that community board once highlighted in their recommendations?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. Yeah, as Susan mentioned, even though it's not required for 100% affordable project, we met with Councilmember Salamanca and worked through several design solutions that would offer parking to alleviate the concerns of the community board. And I think we're all pleased with the result. I also want to add that Monadnock Construction, who's handling the project, they're a known developer of affordable housing, and they have spoken to the other concerns of the community board, including traffic during construction. They also perform outreach to local community groups. They provide walk-in candidate applications for community board for local workers for the site. So we feel as if we've addressed many of the concerns voiced by the community board.
Thank you, Eric. I now invite my colleagues to ask questions. If you have questions for the applicant panel, please use the raise hand button on the participant panel. Council, are there any council members with questions?
Chair, I don't see any council members with questions at this time.
There being no further questions, the applicant panel is excused. Council, are there any members of the public who wish to testify on Our Lady of Pity proposal?
Chair, let me verify, but it looks like no members? Oh, actually, yes, we do have one member of the public who signed up to testify for this item. Carolyn Harris, can we admit her so she can testify? It looks like we're trying to promote her. Oh, there she is. I see her now.
Members of the public will be given 2 minutes to speak. Please do not begin until the sergeant at arms has started the clock.
Your time will begin.
You may begin.
Good morning. I'm Caroline Harris. I'm partner at Goldman Harris and represent the application. I want only to thank the council and Councilmember Riley for his questions and for listening to the presentation. I do hope you support this excellent project and look forward to the next stage of the proceeding.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for this panel from council members, council?
I don't see any council members with hands up for this panelist.
Are there any more members of the public that wish to testify on this item?
Not at this time, Chair Riley. We can go ahead and close it.
Thank you. There being no other members of the public who wish to testify on preconsidered LUs related to ULURPs numbers C210321, ZMX, and N210322, ZRX relating to the Our Lady of Pity 272 East 151st Street rezoning proposal. The public hearing is now closed and items are laid over. I will now open the public hearing on the preconsidered LUs relating to the ULURPs numbers C210312, ZMK, and N210313, ZRK relating to the 103 Lee Avenue proposal in Councilmember Ressler's district in Brooklyn. This application seeking a zoning amendment to rezone an existing R6 and R6/C1-3 to an R7X/C2-4 and a related zoning text amendment to establish an MIH program area. For anyone wishing to testify on this item, if you have not already done so, you must register online, and you may do that now by visiting the council's website at council.nyc.gov/land use. I would now like to give Councilmember Ressler the floor to give any remarks regarding this project. Good morning, Councilmember Ressler.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Chair Riley. It is great always to be with you. You do a great job leading this committee, and I really am fortunate to have you as a colleague here on the council. Before the applicant begins, I just want to say we've struggled on communication with this applicant. It took our office reaching out to get them to engage with us, and I've been disappointed by the engagement with the surrounding community as well. We're trying our best to improve the communication and address the concerns. Fundamentally, my primary issue and concern with this project is that the unit sizes that are planned simply do not reflect the needs of the surrounding community. And the average family sizes in this area of South Williamsburg are 6 to 8 children per family. And when this application was certified, it was all 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms and 1 3-bedroom unit. So it just simply they've been working toward making some slight modifications, but there is significant work still to be done before this is a project that effectively meets the needs of the community in South Williamsburg. So look forward to hearing from the applicant today and having the opportunity to ask some questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Ressler. Council, please call the first panel for this item.
The applicant's panel for this item is Richard LaBelle, Mark Spitzer, Bayan Batan, and Kevin Williams.
Council, please administer the affirmation.
Applicants, I'll call on each of you individually to answer the following question. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before the subcommittee and in your answers to all council member questions. Richard LaBelle,
I do.
Payan Batan,
I do.
Kevin Williams,
I do.
Mark Spitzer. Mark. Mr. LaBelle, we can't unmute Mr. Spitzer. Is he in the meeting that you're aware of?
Here I am.
Okay.
Hello?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you.
I'm not this proficient in computers. More
No
like bricks
problem.
and mortar is more my style.
No problem. You're all sworn in. Thank you.
Thank you. For the benefit of the viewing public, if you need an accessible version of this presentation, please send an email request to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. And now the applicant team may begin. Panelists, as you begin, I'll just ask you to please reinstate your name and organization for the record. You may begin.
Good morning, council members. Richard LaBelle of Sheldon LaBelle PC for the applicant Mark Spitzer. It's a pleasure to be in front of you this morning on an application for 103 Lee Avenue that enjoyed the near unanimous support of Brooklyn Community Board 1, the support of the Brooklyn Borough President, and the support of the City Planning Commission. We hope, council members, that you will find it meritorious as well and support this project. Next slide, or if you can load the slides, that'd be great. So the 103 Lee Avenue rezoning, next slide. What are we seeking to do here? This application is for a zoning map amendment to rezone Brooklyn Block 2200, Lot 6, and Block 2199, Lot 22, as well as parts of several other lots, which would not be infected by the rezoning, from an existing R6 to a proposed R7X. It's worth noting that the existing R6 has an underlying floor area ratio of 4.8 in a mixed-use building. The R7X that is sought here would produce a 5.95 FAR. As with other rezonings of this type, we would also seek to amend the text of the zoning resolution to provide for mandatory inclusionary housing, options 1 and 2. And the result of the eventual approval would be for a new 8-story development at, again, a roughly 5.95 FAR. This would produce roughly 52 dwelling units, of which 16 would be affordable pursuant to option 2. There would also be parking spaces provided at the development site. Next slide. The next slide has the numbers behind the proposal. Again, this is for an 8-story building in an area where there are a number of larger buildings, including 6 to 7-story buildings on the same block and adjacent blocks. The floor area, again, would be roughly 52,925 square feet, with 45,000 such square feet being residential, and importantly, 7,700 square feet being commercial. This is important because Lee Avenue in this area operates as a commercial thoroughfare, and despite much commercial activity in the area, this block does not contain a commercial overlay. So in addition to the residential benefits here, you'd have the benefit of allowing for additional commercial on this front. The total height of the building would be 84 feet, setback at the 8th story at 15 feet. There would be 15 vehicular parking spaces and 52 dwelling units, again, breaking down to 13 units affordable under option 1 and 16 units affordable under option 2. Next slide. The next slide demonstrates the zoning map. And what can be seen here is that you've got an existing R6, as was discussed before. This is not an isolated area of R6. It's a rather large, expansive R6 area, permitting, again, densities up to 2.43 and 3 for residential to 4.8 for mixed-use community facility, as well as existing R7-1 to the southwest of the site. So this is not an area in which density is unknown. And the R7X here, importantly, and unlike many of these other districts, would result in the production of affordable housing, which is much needed in the area. Next slide, which has the flip side of the zoning map, again, showing the easterly portion of the area. Again, notice the R6 prevalent in much of the area, as well as selected R7-1 and R7A districts to the southeast. Next slide. The next slide, and actually next 2 slides, demonstrates on the tax map where exactly the zoning would be applied. Again, you see that the primary thrust of the zoning would be at 103 Lee Avenue and at 100 Lee Avenue across the street. These are the only 2 lots which would be wholly encompassed by the rezoning to allow for potential redevelopment. You also notice that it is not merely for R7X, but that there's also a commercial overlay proposed at the site. And if you can skip 2 slides, you will see why that is important and merited here. As you look to the surrounding area, the 13 surrounding blocks on the north and south side of Lee Avenue here are all overlaid with commercial zoning. This is the only really half block that is not. And so proposing a commercial overlay here would have the added benefit of evening out the zoning map, allowing for this contiguous commercial thoroughfare and commercial use on the ground floor of this building. The next several slides demonstrate the pictures of the surrounding site. To note, the BQE is located within 200 feet of the site. So again, a major thoroughfare in the area. Other photos are included, including the building, which itself is partially under construction. The slide after the photographs shows the zoning change map, which merely demonstrates what the map would look like after proposed rezoning. Next slide. One more. Yeah, there we go. So the zoning map here would show an R7X district overlaid over both the east and west portion of Lee Avenue. Again, a few things to note. The first being that this half block is the only half block in the immediate area you can see without a commercial overlay. So this would correct that condition. And in addition, you've got the existing R6, which is prevalent in the area, the R71 in the southeast, as well as the street system here, which allows for a variety of transit options and good access to the site. So all of these things would merit for the additional density at the site, which again would produce affordability. The next slide shows a rendering of the property. And after that, we show a site plan and various floor plans. The site plan demonstrating the 7,700 square feet of commercial use on the ground floor. Next slide. And then various sections and elevations. The elevation showing the section showing the 15-foot setback at the 8th story. Beyond that, next slide, you've got the ground floor or actually cellar parking. And then the slides beyond those, I think you can page through, show potential room and unit layouts. So I think there's really only 2 other things to note with regards to the proposal as we page through quickly the remainder of the slides. Photos and renderings of the site as have been previously produced. You can go to the last slide, I believe, or the second to last slide. We've got a breakdown of the units. Again, we add various slides which demonstrate the views eastward and westward of the site, including 6 and 7 story to 21 story building. I'll just summarize the unit count. So the next slide shows the unit count, which includes, as was stated by Councilmember Ressler, 20 one-bedroom units, 31 two-bedroom units, and 1 3-bedroom unit. So this is a building which is heavily favored over 1 bedrooms. The average is greater than 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms. And understanding the comments with regards to the area and what's required, the applicant here is making efforts to increase the size of the units. We have engaged a separate consulting architect who has done much work in the area, and he's currently looking at the opportunity to enlarge some of the units by reducing some of the unit counts. The next slide also demonstrates the mandatory and inclusionary housing at the site, which demonstrates under each option the different AMIs that would be afforded. Again, option 1 and option 2 are offered at the site, with option 1 resulting in approximately 13 affordable units and option 2 resulting in approximately 16 units. We were very happy to have worked with the community board on this to achieve an approval. There was potentially as of right development at the site, which would produce limited affordability as there is no MIH at the site currently. So the proposal does allow for a modest increase in density, but more importantly creates an additional roughly 19 units of affordability along with the additional units that are created for the building generally. So again, given the street access to the site, other buildings in the area, and the commercial overlay, we think that this application has merit. And with that, the applicant team is happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. I have a few questions and I'll pass it over to Councilmember Wrestler to see if he has any questions. The proposed development site is already under construction with the as of right R6 zoning. How many units and stories will be building? Will the building be under R6? Why did you decide to apply for a rezoning if there is a viable as of right development? And will the current partially constructed building be adapted to fit the proposed R7X zoning?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Riley. So the building was under construction at a time when construction prices were rising, and the applicant, importantly, conceived of this as a rezoned property. So the building started, and as it became apparent that financially there was going to be stress on the building and on the applicant, that's when they essentially came into city planning, and with the concurrence of city planning, applied for this rezoning. So the existing 4.5-story building which would be able to be built as a right would contain roughly 29 units, of which 6 units would be affordable under existing affordability. The opportunity here to add units to the site allows for an additional 23 units with a total of 16 units of affordability. So although there is an increase in units, there's a greater proportion of increase in affordable units. So with that, with the fact that the building had proven financially to be challenging, with the addition of the affordability and with the density in the area generally, the applicant with city planning made the addition to come in and to build this. They've already consulted with, there's a project architect, there's a consulting architect. They've already talked to DOB. The existing structure was built with the understanding and the ability to engineer such that they could add the additional 3.5 stories. So yes, they would be utilizing the existing structure and be able to build above that to complete the building.
The proposed R7X zoning allows up to 14 stories, but the proposed building is only 8 stories. This is an unusual large gap between the potential allowable height and what is being presented. Can you explain why your building is proposed at only 8 stories?
Sure, Chair. So the corner nature of the building allows the building to take advantage of lack of rear yard requirements to build on a wider floor plate. And the building has been engineered, as I said, for an 8-story building, actually for 9-story building, which is now an 8-story building. The applicant, as we went through the public review process, it became clear that despite the fact that city planning approved this at an R7X and saw the merit to having an opportunity to do a 14-story building here, the applicant has no financial reason or otherwise to do a 14-story building. So both the community board and the Brooklyn Borough President made recommendations that in the event that the application was finally approved, that the applicant enter into a voluntarily restrictive declaration to tie the application to 8 stories. This has been totally acceptable to the applicant, and judging after the conversation with Councilmember Wrestler, assuming that the application did go forward, we would record such a declaration on the site so as to provide for a cap. Again, from a land use standpoint, the City Planning Commission was clear that the R7X was appropriate and the area would merit that building. Having said that, the applicant has no desire nor any need or or feasible reason to go that high, and so we would cap the building at 8 stories.
The South Williamsburg community is known for the large family sizes and high demand for large apartments, 3 bedrooms. Have you considered the proposed unit size mix with this in mind? And have you discussed this issue with Councilmember Wrestler and the local community?
Yeah, so I'll start on that and leave it open to other members of the applicant team to talk. The community board here had an additional condition, which was that they understood the need for additional housing and for affordability, but they weren't interested in smaller units. So as it stands right now, again, as part and parcel of the decision to cap the building at 8 stories, there was a decision to cap the building at 52 units so that you wouldn't be able to, in essence, create additional units and raise the numbers in the building. The applicant here, who's a longstanding member of the Williamsburg community, has had many conversations with people in the area. I think, in essence, the discussions that have taken place primarily over the last few days in good faith are that we do have consulting architects now who have discussed the opportunity here for combining units and for reducing unit counts. But I think that one of the things we're looking at, of course, in addition to the Williamsburg community, is the community in general. And I know that Kevin Williams, who's on the environmental, has looked at, as part of the environmental review, demographics of the area. Kevin, do you want to just speak briefly to what those are and how they apply to the larger community?
Sure. So one of the things I wanted to state about the chair's last question, that the FAR is actually maxed out at 8 stories. So that's one of the, you reach the full allowed under the proposed rezoning. So going up higher also is sort of obviated by that. In terms of the demographics, so as Mr. LaBelle indicated, we're in discussions and we intend to do everything we can to come to an agreement that matches his understanding and our understanding in the most favorable mix possible. There are some structural components that we have to work through, but I want you to know that the applicant team is committed to working forward to a resolution that better matches what he and interests in this area. They're very familiar community leaders in this area, very familiar with the needs. So one thing that we did look at in terms of trying to find the proper matches, we looked at some of the demographic characteristics from 2006 to 2019 with the American Community Survey. And if I may share my screen for a moment or provide this post testimony, I pulled up New York City population fact finder data on this. And one of the interesting things that you can see in this area, and one of the primary reasons that Mr. Spitzer is positioning the building with 2 bedrooms is at, over 1 bedrooms, or even what you commonly see in a rezoning, which is just a bunch of 1 bedrooms and studios, very few 2s. This is actually, granted, we have special circumstances in this neighborhood that dictate the need for larger units from a market perspective and from a future need. But what is clear is you have, in 2006 to 2010, 25% of the population was under 5 years. That's declined to 17.6% as those children have aged. And then when you look at similar age cohorts from 5 to 9 and 10 to 14, about that represented, each one of those classes represented about 9% of the population. And in 2015 to 2019, those increased to 13% and to 10%. But what's also reciprocally interesting is from age 20 to 29, you actually have a significant reduction, almost a 50% reduction in both of those age groups. And the indication, or the way that I'm interpreting the data, and obviously statistics are open to interpretation, is that you have young families that lived in a communal setting in this area with their larger families. As Councilmember Ressler noted, you have families with 5, 6, and 7 people in a household, and that is borne out. Actually, the average household size in this area, as the 2020 census, is 3.9 persons per dwelling unit. And so you do have a considerable family size there. But what's clear from the statistics is that, young adults are leaving this area and not staying, close to their family. And I think the primary reason is the lack of available and affordable housing. And I think that is where Mr. Spitzer's mind is supplying, 1 and 2 bedroom units that would accommodate small families as they move out and they try to establish a work life in the area. And so given those statistics, and also the need to provide broader affordability, because, 3-bedroom units are quite expensive, whether affordable or market rate, that's something that, families having a range of choices to accommodate their financial needs and their family size is something that we're trying to balance out. So I just wanted to kind of summarize those characteristics, and anybody can pull that up on New York Population Fact Finder, a service provided by New York City Department of City Planning, to kind of get that interesting shift over the past 10 years in demographics towards basically the movement of young adults out of the neighborhood.
Thank you, Kevin. And my last question before I turn it to Councilmember Ressler, see if he has any questions. The application also includes 100 Lee Avenue across the street as a projected development site. Have there been any conversations with this property owner?
Yes, so thank you, Chair. So there have been, as with other rezoning applications, when creating a land use rationale, the applicant looks to other properties in the area so as to include other properties that are affected by the same conditions. So we included 100 Lee Avenue. That was a land use rationale that was developed in conjunction with city planning. We have reached out to that applicant who, despite the fact that they also currently benefit from an R6 zoning district with a commercial overlay, have only built to roughly a 1 FAR. So as our current conversations have gone, not only have they not redeveloped in the last 40 years, but their intention right now, as they stated to us, would be not to redevelop. So again, obviously a conversation which many council members engage in, but they are currently including the rezoning, but as per our conversations with them, they have no present intention of redevelopment.
Thank you. I would now like to turn it over to Councilmember Ressler to see if he has any questions. Councilmember Ressler.
Thank you again, Chair Riley. I should have begun my remarks earlier with just expressing my thoughts and prayers with everyone in Sunset Park. This is a scary morning for Brooklyn and for New York City and beyond, and hoping that everybody, all 13 folks who've been taken to the hospital, are okay, and that there's no further carnage and bloodshed in our borough. I would also like to express my warm wishes to Mr. Spitzer, who's had some health challenges, and hoping for a full and swift recovery for him, and appreciate you taking the time to speak with us last week and again to join us today as you're in recovery. So thank you for that. I really want to thank you, Chair Riley, for your questions that really get, I think, at the heart of many of my concerns as well. I think that plainly it's disingenuous for the applicant team to claim that their proposal of 1 and 2 bedrooms, when this proposal reached the community board and the borough president, it was entirely 1 and 2 bedrooms with 1 3-bedroom, that this is to serve the needs of the community when the average family size is 5, 6, 7, 8 people. And to claim that providing 1-bedroom units is going to address the displacement of young families from this community who have no place to live is infuriating. It is not true. And what this community desperately needs is more 3 and 4-bedroom units. And if this developer was focused on meeting the needs of the community rather than just making as much money as absolutely possible, that's exactly what they would have proposed, and they would be building here. But it's not. So I just want to ask plainly, you have upped your proposal now to 4 additional 3-bedroom units. Is the development team prepared to continue to revisit their architectural plans to add additional 3-bedroom units to this proposal?
Well, we benefit from having Mr. Spitzer here with us today. Mark, are you able to confirm what the council member just said?
Good morning, gentlemen. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry about that. Good morning, esteemed council members. My name is Mark Spitzer, and if those are wondering, I am not related to the previous governor. I have no connection in any which way, and that not monetarily, and I'm not inheriting anything, and I'm not in there. We're a small-time developer. We actually bought it. My father-in-law, who passed away about 2 years ago, had bought this property for the purpose of development. Unfortunately, it's not going to see the light of the end game of what we anticipated here. I grew up in Leesburg all the way till my father passed away. I have currently multiple family members. I have lots of friends, close family, extended family. I know the area extremely well. And as Councilman Restler probably knows, and we had this discussion before, there are multiple weddings and engagements on a daily basis where they're splitting at the seams. People are living in homeless shelters. They're living in their parents' basements. They're living in backyards. They're living with multiple extended family members just to get a roof on their head. Yes, everybody needs 3-bedroom, a 4-bedroom, a 5-bedroom. But I have a little stupid little piece of property, and I'm trying to maximize of who I can get in there that makes sense. The more larger apartments we build, the less we can accommodate. It's a simple calculation. And this isn't a huge money-making business. My costs today, estimated cost of when we started, is 6-fold of what we started. It's almost not worth to go down this route. The cost of financing is through the roof. Utilities is through the roof. Water is through the roof. You have to make a calculation of how you're going to make this thing work. So we came up with a formula that will help the most amount of people. Yes, it is not the 3 and 4 bedroom, but I don't have this kind of land to do this. If God gave me more land, I would consider it. And definitely, it's a no-brainer. I can only do work with what I have. There's a limited amount of what I have, what I can work with. So yes, it has to work structurally, financially, feasibly. There's a lot of factors to go into this, and it's not a 1-minute answer. We hired an outside consultant, an outside architect who did not look at this project before, just to get a clear view and an outside opinion of what we can make work. Yes, if we can make it work, I'm all for it. It comes down to dollars and cents. It comes back to feasibility. It comes back to accessibility and what is required to accommodate. My goal here was to give the young couples who are getting married a roof over their head to start their life for a couple of years. I gave them a recreation area away from the hustle and bustle, a nice quiet pursuit where they can have their life start out. At least the first few years of their married life, they can enjoy in peace without having the hustle and bustle, and having to be able to live in a home that they can call home, giving them full living room, dining room, giving them full bedroom, multiple closet, washer dryers, recreation area, everything that you can think of that you would be proud of to call home. That was my goal. Yes, there's people who need large apartments. I can't please everybody. As Mayor Adams recently said, in a city like this, everybody's got an opinion. You're never going to please everybody. I'd love to, but I'm not a magician, and I don't have the wherewithal to do it, and I don't have the resources to do it. I just don't understand where I'm coming from, and this is where I stand, and I'd love to help everybody if I can. And this is where I'm at.
Spitzer, I appreciate your effort, your desire to please everybody. I'm looking for you to please somebody. So, over the course of this project, neither you nor anyone from your applicant team ever contacted our office or engaged us. We had to ping you again and again to get your attention to engage on this project. Community leaders, key community leaders that have been representing the South Williamsburg community for decades, never heard from you, did not get responses from you and your team. So to act like you're trying to please everybody is inaccurate. I'm not, from my vantage point, you have an existing building that is financially viable and workable. You're asking us to hand you over a pile of cash so that you can build more by upzoning the development. In return, we're asking you to meet the needs of the community. That is the deal, and that is the expectation of going through this process, is that you are investing to address the needs of our community. And I have not asked for the sun, the moon, and the stars here. I've not asked for how we revitalize Lee Avenue and invest and improve the conditions on Lee. I've not asked for you to take a look at the schoolyard at PS 716 down the block that's in terrible condition. I've just asked for you to build housing that actually meets the needs of the community. Simple as that. That is our goal. I'm not saying this as some person who has some narrow interest here. I say this as the representative of our community, that we need family units that actually accommodate the needs of families. And you have refused and resisted and only made the most minor of modifications. And so I want to be very clear. If you would like my support in upzoning this development, it's critical to me that we actually build to meet the needs of the community. So I really do hope that you will work with us in the weeks ahead to address the needs of the community, which require larger unit sizes. It's as simple as that. one more question, and then I'll defer back to the chair. You all referenced a plan for a restrictive deck for this site to limit the building to 8 stories. And I believe Mr. Williams indicated his indication that this fully built out the FAR, obviating any opportunity for additional height on the building. Just wanted to affirm on the record that our desire for community benefits agreement is something that you all will work with us on if we're able to meet an acceptable mixture of unit sizes to memorialize our agreement in tangible and enforceable in an enforceable document.
Sure. So thank you, council members. So we have engaged in similar community benefits agreements, most recently in the Pacific and Grand rezoning in Brooklyn Community Board 8 model, which has been vetted by the council. And yes, I can confirm that we would be happy to work with your office going forward to have an appropriate co-party and to engage in such an agreement.
Okay. And then actually just one final question regarding the affordable housing administering agent for the new development. Is there any plan for the marketing of the new units or the selection of that administering agent?
So I know Mr. Spitzer has had serious conversations with a local administering agent. I know that there is a limited universe of such agents, basically based upon HPD's approved list. So I know that I'm not sure whether he has come to final terms, but it is one that he's met with within the local Williamsburg community.
Okay. Cultural competency here makes a great deal of difference. And
was expired.
Okay. Mr. Chair.
You could go ahead, Councilmember.
Cultural competency here makes a great deal of difference. And we very much hope that from everything from the design of the units, to accommodate holidays like Pesach and Sukkot, to the marketing of the affordable units, that there'll be a thoughtful approach to really effectively meet the needs of the local community. So I really appreciate the opportunity for some questions. We clearly have quite a bit of work to do before I'm prepared to support this development. So I look forward to working closely with the applicant team in the days and weeks ahead to try to get us to a better place.
Thank you, Councilmember Ressler. I now invite my colleagues to ask questions. If you have any questions for this applicant panel, please use the raise hand button on the participant panel. Council, are there any council members with questions?
I don't see any council members with questions at this time.
There being no further questions, this applicant panel is excused. Council, are there any members of the public who wish to testify on the 103 Lee Avenue proposal?
Yes, Chair, we have at least 2 members of the public who are ready to testify. We have Chesky Weiss and David Niederman. And if the unknown caller with whose number ends in 0743 is here to testify on Lee Avenue, please press *9 so our staff can identify you and promote you. But for now, we'll start with Chesky Weiss.
Members of the public will be given 2 minutes to speak. Please do not begin until the Sergeant at Arms has started the clock.
Your time will begin.
You may begin.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. You may begin.
Okay, so I was just, I just want to say in support for Mark Spitzer. Basically, this guy, as I know him, as I have stated before, I know him the last few years. He is here to help the community, and as he said, as you heard before, he's trying to maximize. So with putting in more 3-room apartments, 3-bedroom apartments, it's just gonna make it less of an opportunity to give more people their needs for the young couples. And now they're asking he should accommodate Pesach and Sukkot, which is gonna mean that he's gonna have to build for bigger apartments. He's gonna have to give a special kitchen for Pesach, and then he's going to have to make a bigger porch, so people should be able to build a sikas, which is just going to make him have to do a smaller amount of apartments, because he has to be able to push in another kitchen, and he has to push in a bigger porch for the community, because as our community is growing, they need place for all the kids to be able to sit sickest in the porch. So now when he built it for smaller apartments, which means young couples, first of all, there's more young couples that are capable to have apartments. And then he doesn't have to put in a small other kitchen or a bigger porch, because most of the young couples are going out to eat by their parents, especially on Yom Tov and holiday. So it's just a less of a benefit. If he has to put in more 3-bedroom apartments, that means that's bigger families, and that means less apartments, there's less people. And if there is less people, as again, I'm from around the area and I need more customers. So more apartments, smaller apartments means more customers. And as I have stated a while ago on the last meeting, that we need the customers, since most of the development is going down the other area, like Wallabout or a Troop and I forgot, a Cascade, all the other places but Lee Avenue. So yeah, we need smaller apartments in this area with more people around in this area. And I have another question. How would you put in bigger families in such a small area? I mean, where will the kids play? Where will there be parking for? Because a young couple, most of the young people don't have cars. So you had an issue with parking. Yeah, if you're gonna put in bigger families, means older people do have cars. So you're just trying to take away a benefit for him, because quote unquote benefit for the community, but then it's not going to be a benefit for the community, because two things. Number one, most of the people that are growing up are not living in rental apartments. Most of them are going into selling apartments, and the young couples are moving in to rental apartments. And let me ask you another question. How many rental developments in this area has 3-bedroom apartments? I haven't heard of it. There's maybe one that built the last few years, a rental building with 3-bedroom apartments. Nobody has it. So the benefit for the community is if Mark can do smaller apartments and more, because that's what the community needs at the moment. Because as somebody stated, yeah, there is a lot of people getting married in Williamsburg, and we need smaller apartments for the young couples to have where to live.
Thank you. We can move on to the next testimony.
The next speaker, and I see he's in the meeting now, is David Niederman.
Please begin after the sergeant starts the clock.
Your time will begin.
I hope you hear me. Good morning. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. And please allow me also to express our real concern of what has happened. And we pray for the victims and their families. And we also pray that the perpetrator should not, God forbid, hit other people as well. So now to the point, let me just first commend our council member who sprang into action. And as he said that, there was no community engagement, and that is so crucial. And yes, you have different voice. You heard somebody, I don't know who that is, talking about his view of what's needed and what's not needed. You know, I don't know who he is, whom he represents, and he could be he's represent definitely himself. But from a wider community perspective, the need for affordable 3 and 4 bedrooms is unbelievable. And therefore, I commend the council member to push that there ought to be that a project should meet the community needs. And I agree with the developer that some are going to be 1s and 2s, but you really have to address the crunch of the larger units. I'm happy, and I voted for this project because I'm happy that there is a project coming forward, and I'm happy that the congressman, the councilman is pushing forward for tweaking the project so that it really meets all the community needs. I don't want to going back to Mr. Weiss, who his point of views rebuttal that, because that's not the issue. I just thank the councilman. I thank Mr. Spitzer for his commitment to work with the councilman to ensure the appropriate mix of units, and in a way, nobody wants to that the developer goes bankrupt on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Council. Are there any other members of the public who wish to testify on this item?
I don't see any others, but I'll just make the announcement once again. If there's any unknown callers who wish to testify on the avenue, can you please press *9 now so that we can identify you? Doesn't look like anyone else is here for that, Chair, so we can go ahead and close the hearing.
There being no other members of the public who wish to testify on this pre-considered LUs related to ULIPs numbers C210312, ZMK, and N210313, ZRK relating to the 103 Lee Avenue proposal, the public hearing is now closed and the items are laid over. I now open the public hearing on pre-considers LUs related to ULIPs numbers C210098, ZMK, and N210099, ZRK, relating to the 1220 Avenue P rezoning proposal in Councilmember Vernikov District in Brooklyn. This application seeks a zoning map amendment to rezone an existing RFB to an R7A and a related zoning text amendment to establish an MIH program. For anyone wishing to testify on this item, if you have not already done so, you must register now, and you may do that by visiting the council's website at council.nyc.gov/land use. I would now like to allow Councilmember Vernikov to give any remarks regarding this project. Councilmember Vernikov.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chair Riley, and thank you, council members. I'd first just like to echo the sentiments of my colleagues regarding the horrific events that took place this morning, and of course, sending prayers to my colleague, Councilmember Aviles, and the victims as well as her constituents. Regarding 1212 Avenue P, this is a facility, a medical facility that I am familiar with. It's been in the district for quite some time. They provide great service to the community. I've spoken to many community members who patronize the place and really enjoy the services. I visited it myself for quite some time, and I know that the community's board's concerns were mostly the traffic and parking, which I believe these concerns were adequately addressed. I know that the borough president Reynoso is supportive of the project and he voted for the project. I also spoke to him for quite some time about that. And yeah, I'd just like to encourage my colleagues to support the project and thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Council, please call the first panel for this item.
The panel for this item includes, once again, Richard LaBelle and Kevin Williams. And Richard, can you confirm it's just the two of you for this item?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so just a reminder to both of you that you're still under oath. So we don't need to swear them in, Chair, because they have been sworn.
Thank you. For the benefit of the viewing public, if you need an accessible version of this presentation, please send an email request to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. And now the applicant team may begin. Panelists, as you begin, I'll just ask you to please reinstate your name and organization for the record. You may begin.
Thank you, Chair Riley. Council members, once again, Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel PC for the applicant. Good morning, and good morning to Councilmember Vernikov. We also thank her for her careful consideration of what we view to be a meritorious application and one which allows for the enlargement of a heavily utilized medical center in the community. I'm joined by Kevin Williams from Equity Environmental. And so on the screen before you, you see the 1220p Avenue rezoning presentation. The building as it exists is currently a 5-story medical center of roughly 19,000 square feet. If we can go to the next page, we'll have a project summary which talks about what we would do here. So the rezoning as proposed here would take 3 lots from block 6774 and 7 lots from block 6775 and rezone those from an R5B district to an R7A district. To note, this lot was previously zoned R6 prior to the 2006 Homecrest rezoning and was then zoned to an R5B at the time. But at the time, that big building or the 5-story building had already been built. So we're seeking to restore the same approximate bulk of that building to allow for this enlargement. So what does that do? It creates a roughly 4-story, 11,000 square foot addition to the medical center located on 2 adjacent lots, so that the entirety of the building would have approximately 30,700 square feet in FAR 3.08. Importantly, we also, as per rezonings of this nature, would map mandatory inclusionary housing to allow for MIH to apply for all sites within the project area. While development or redevelopment of the site is not intended, this would mean that anytime in the future, whether these subject lots or the adjacent lots were redeveloped, they would be required to provide affordable housing. Next slide. So the next slide discusses the proposed development, and importantly, here, one of the reasons that we do have a very compelling case is because there's an as-of-right option here, which is way worse. So the proposal allows for this 4-story enlargement, which will be able to attach to the existing 5-story building and allow for patients to travel seamlessly between the old space and the new space. And this is important because many of these patients are frail and elderly, and it would make no sense to require them to exit the facility to go to a new facility, go upstairs, downstairs, elevators, what have you. So the 5-story building has 19,500 square feet approximately, and the new enlargement would be roughly 11,200 square feet to allow for a total building of 30,000 square feet. An as-of-right scenario would allow for development of 3-story buildings on each of the other lots within the development site, which would itself result in a additional enlargement of 9,400 square feet. So roughly within 1,700 square feet of what's going to be done with the rezoning. Importantly, though, there are 2 factors to consider. The first is that no parking would be required for those additional buildings. They would each fall under the requirement in terms of allowing for a waiver of parking. So you'd get 3 additional buildings with all that square footage with no additional parking. And also importantly, as was mentioned, this would mean that people would need to go outside the building, within the new building to get care. And considering the long list of valuable medical services provided by the center, which include cardiology, family practice, general surgery, gynecology, internal medicine, occupational therapy, orthopedic, the list goes on. It really is an area where particularly elderly and frail patients are able to get all their care under one roof. What this also allows is that because development will not be happening on 2 of the adjacent lots, we will be able to provide accessory parking on those lots. And as we have mentioned to the council member, we would provide 14 accessory spaces to serve these medical spaces. So again, the result is beneficial both in terms of building travel, circulation of patients, and parking. Next slide, please. So the next slide and the following slide goes into the land use of the area. Once again, you can see the R5B district here. We are merely a block west, or actually a block west of us is the R7A district that exists along Coney Island Avenue. And this is important for several reasons. You'll be able to see it in terms of the land use map, but basically as you get to larger thoroughfares, it becomes more and more appropriate to have larger zoning districts. So even without the important work that the medical center performs, having a step up in zoning here makes sense given transit in the area and the fact that you're sitting not merely on a 100-foot wide street, but within a block and a half of a 100-foot wide street as well. The next two slides show the tax map, which shows in particularity, you can see the rezoning area, particularly development site highlighted in red, and in the dotted area, the entirety of the rezoning. This essentially stretches an existing R7A zoning district to the east, which allows for context for this proposed rezoning. As often is the case, it helps for a land use rationale to take an existing district and to use that to encompass a site, as is done here. Next slide. So the next slide shows the land use map, which again demonstrates why the rezoning here is particularly important. You can see the existing 5-story building on the corner of Avenue P and East 13th. That's the existing facility. And you can also see that we sit on Avenue P, a 100-foot wide street, and we sit a block and a half east, or more particularly, the rezoning boundary itself sits half a block east of Coney Island Avenue and is adjacent to that R7A. So again, context in the surrounding area. You see in the dark orange a number of 6-story buildings in the area. Our building would not exceed those buildings in height, including on our own block and across East 13th. So as far as a bulk standpoint, or from a bulk standpoint, this really is entirely within the context of the area. Next slide. So the next several slides, and obviously this is a long day at the council, we'll page through them. If you can page through the photos, you can see pictures of the existing facility building on the lower left and in front of you. And then that is followed by the building plans. The building plans merely demonstrate the proposed floor plans for the facility. You see the existing building along the bottom of the screen and the enlargement as it appears perpendicular to that on the left portion of the screen under proposed construction. So with that, if you want to page through to the end, these are all the treatment spaces, and you would come to a rendering, which again is the sum of the proposal is that the rendering demonstrates a seamless building which would attach to the existing building and would provide again one important center, the Levitt Medical Center, for all of these varied specialties. One, and I think probably the most important thing which I would close on would be that you don't have a lot of facilities like this in the immediate area in Brooklyn. What the medical center here is able to do is to provide for specialty services to allow for patients to not have to travel to Manhattan to receive many treatments that they would otherwise be required to travel miles and miles to receive. So again, it's the Levitt Medical Center Midwood. It's been as the council member mentioned, a long-standing partner to the community here. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Richard. Just a few questions before I turn it over to Councilmember Vernikov. Has the applicant been in touch with the community board since they disapproved the application to discuss the parking and traffic situation? What is the current status of those discussions, and how is your team planning to address their concerns?
Sure, Chair. So I will tell you that pre-COVID, this application came before the community board almost 5 years ago in its first iteration. And at the time, particularly based upon the compelling story that is told by Susan Levitt, the executive director and doctor at the center, the community board at that time issued a conditional letter saying that if the applicant was able to provide, I think at the time, 12 additional parking spaces, that at least the land use committee of Brooklyn Community Board 15 was in favor. Since that time, there was discussions. The application was voted down by the community board. The applicant has solidified the number of spaces at 14 spaces and attended spaces. So this is not merely self-park. We're able to better coordinate patient visits. Since that time as well, Kevin Williams, who's on the phone with us, has done additional parking and traffic studies, importantly demonstrating that this is one of those cases where you've got an option without a rezoning, but it is worse for everyone. The center does not get seamless space, and the traffic and parking in the area would actually be worse given the fact that there would now be multiple drop-off locations and you would not get the benefit of these 14 spaces. So although communications with the community board at the last hearing did not continue, we continued to discuss this with local elected officials, including the Brooklyn Borough President who approved this application. And so, we're really focused on the fact that we're going to be good neighbors, and we've taken a lot of efforts to address what those parking and traffic concerns will be.
Thank you, Richard. I would like to turn it over to Councilmember Vernikov to see if she has any questions. Councilmember Vernikov.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, I don't know if I made it clear in my remarks. After doing some research, I do believe in the need for the expansion. So I just wanted to make that clear. My first question is, will the parking provided for the facility be a surface parking lot or below grade parking lot?
It will be a surface parking lot.
Okay. And if the applicant knows the current demand for healthcare facilities in the area, and is there a current demand for healthcare facilities in the area generally? And if so, will this expansion help the overburdened facilities?
Sure. So I'll start, Kevin. I'm not sure whether or not any of that is part of the EAS, but just from my visits to the center and discussing this with the applicant, it appears to me that the center is heavily utilized and that there is continuing demand for these facilities. As far as documenting that, Kevin, I don't know whether or not you have any statistics on that.
I can do my best. The environmental assessment focuses sort of generically on a worst case condition, actually evaluates, both the non-applicant sites and this. And so it kind of looks at a different textured scenario to assess the environmental impact. But I will say this, there's been significant population growth. The R7A that's been put in place on Coney Island Avenue has seen recent development. Based on the scheduling information, I've been able to both speak with the Levitts and that's available online, indicates a long wait for doctor's appointments. But given the population growth in the area and the lack of additional facilities of this type, I would say it's absolutely in demand. And then I think the Levitts would also note how under duress this facility was during COVID, which is an ongoing challenge that seems to be living with us moving forward. And so I think those two notions, that you have a growing population and that you have, obviously, we all experience emergent needs for both the complications resulting from COVID as well as the treatment from COVID, certainly, and anecdotal information online related to the difficulty of getting scheduled at the current facility, all indicate a great need for the additional services.
I don't have any more questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Council Member. I now invite my colleagues to ask any questions. If you have any questions for this applicant panel, please use the raise hand button on the participant panel. Council, are there any council member questions?
Chair, no council members with questions at this time.
There being no further questions, the applicant panel is excused. Council, are there any members of the public who wish to testify on 1220 Avenue P proposal?
Chair, we don't have any members of the public who signed up, but we do have still an unidentified caller at the meeting. So if you're here to testify on Avenue P, could you please hit star 9 on your phone? Chair, it doesn't look like the caller is here for this item, so we can move on and close it here.
There being no other members of the public who wish to testify on pre-considered LUs related to ULURP numbers C210098 ZMK and N210099 ZRK relating to the 1220 Avenue P rezoning proposal. The public hearing is now closed and the items are laid over. I will now open the public hearing on pre-considered LUs related to the ULURPs number C200246 ZMQ and N200247 ZRQ relating to the 146-93 Guy Brewer Boulevard rezoning proposal in Majority Whip, Brooks Powers District in Queens. The application seeks a zoning map amendment to rezone the existing 43-2 to R6A/C2-2 district and a related zoning text amendment to establish an MIH program area. For anyone wishing to testify on this item, if you have not already done so, you must register now, and you may do that now by visiting the council's website at council.nyc.gov/land use. I would like to invite Majority Whip Brooks Powers to give any remarks regarding this project. Good morning, Majority Whip.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Majority Whip.
Thank you. I've been having a little bit of technical challenges. But good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chair Riley and committee staff for convening this hearing. I'm here to discuss the item concerning 146-93 Guy R. Brewer Boulevard, located in my district. I'd like to first thank the civic leaders from my community, as well as the development team and the staff from the council's land use office for the series of constructive conversations that we have had surrounding this project. The perspective of the local community is paramount when it comes to questions around our land use. And I am glad that all parties have come to the table to present their vision for this space and ensure that the final project reflects the preferences of the local community. The proposal as originally submitted would upzone the site to R6A with a commercial overlay to permit an 8-story mixed-use building totaling about 40 units, 25% affordable under MIH. Members of the community have raised serious concerns, and as the members of the subcommittee may be aware, the project was unanimously disapproved by the community board. A development of this size and height would be out of character in the context of the nearby residential neighborhood, which is almost exclusively single-family housing, as well as a manufacturing district next to JFK Airport. It would also introduce a new burden on our resources, increasing strain on local infrastructure and adding congestion to already busy streets. And I might add that we currently are undergoing a massive infrastructure, $2 billion infrastructure upgrade that is being constructed based on the current density of the community. So upzoning would, further strain something that is now being invested in. And the developers have been in touch with my office and have shared alternate plans for the site with me. And we're still collecting feedback from the community, including hosting a town hall to discuss with nearby residents what kind of development they would like to see on Guy Brewer Boulevard. It's my hope that we can bring this feedback to the committee and adjust the slot in a way that is in line with what the community would like to see. And that concludes my remarks, and thank you once again, Chair.
Thank you, Majority Whip. Council, please call the first panel for this item.
Panel for this item is Richard LaBelle, Kevin Williams, Darminder Singh, and Manish Savani.
Council, please administer the affirmation.
For Kevin Williams and Richard LaBelle, just a reminder, you're still under oath. And for the rest of you, I'll call you individually to answer the following question. Can you please raise your right hand, and do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before the subcommittee and in your answers to all council member questions? Darminder Singh?
I do.
And Manish Savani?
I do.
Thank you. For the benefit of the viewing public, if you need an accessible version of the presentation, please send an email request to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. And now the applicant team may begin. Panelists, as you begin, I'll just ask you to please reinstate your name and organization for the record. You may begin.
Thank you, Chair Riley. Good morning, council members. Once again, Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel PC for the applicant. If you can load the presentation. Of course, first we would like to first and foremost thank Councilmember Brooks Powers, who has done the hard work here to bring many constituencies and stakeholders into the room together repeatedly and given of her time generously. And I do not say that lightly. We, as you may be aware from this morning, are involved in a number of rezoning applications, and she's really been first rate in that regard. So thank you, council member, and we do look forward to hopefully a successful conclusion to this process and this rezoning, which you see before you today, the 14693 Guy Brewer Boulevard rezoning. Next slide. So it's impossible to consider this rezoning without considering what has been here since this district was zoned in 1961. And it's been a gas station and has allowed for vacant uses, storage of automobiles. It has really not been a productive site for the community. I think one thing that everyone is united is in wanting this to be something else and something better. Next slide. So given the long history of the site and the long environmental challenges facing the site, Kevin Williams, who was on the call with us from Equity Environmental, his initial calculations with regards to what it would take to produce a feasible development here begin at the cleaning of the site and decontamination of the site, which would result in costs upwards of $600,000 to $800,000. This is probably why the site has remained undeveloped. It is a corner lot adjacent to an M11 district. It is located across the street from a 4-story homeless hotel. It is located across Guy Brewer Boulevard from another homeless institution. You know, it is a challenging spot, this landscape and this intersection. So with that, we do attempt to come before the council and to try to make it better. Next slide. So what are we asking for here? You can see the site 14693 Guy R. Brewer, as well as the sites to the north of that, as proposed to be rezoned from an R32 to an R6A C22 district. Just by way of how we got here, for our ULIP hearings, the council members said, as stated, the local community board did not support this at an R6A. The Queensborough president supported it at an R6B, and the City Planning Commission has approved it at an R6A. So with that, we understand, obviously, there are modifications which will be made. The council member has asked us for a list of options which will be presented. But having said that, you know, again, I think we're unified here in wanting something better. In the existing R6A district, as with other rezonings, we would be able to map an inclusionary housing district, which would require, in the current iteration, option 1, or producing roughly 25% of units at 60% AMI. Next slide. So what you see before you are the 4 alternatives which have been presented to the council member. The original proposal, as was approved by the City Planning Commission most recently, was at an R6A for an 8-story building plus cellar. You see the square footage breakdowns before you. 38,000 square foot building, about 3,000 square feet of commercial space, 35,000 square feet of residential space, and a 1,000 square foot ground floor tenant and meeting recreation space. I won't go through the details of each iteration with you, but just hitting on the highlights. The proposal, as was approved at City Planning, would result in 45 units in varied unit mixes, 4 studios, 29 ones, 10 2-bedrooms and 2 3-bedrooms, and 11 affordable units at MIH option 1. The alternative that was approved by the Queensborough president, 5-story building, 23,000 square feet, again, the same 3,000 square foot commercial and 1,000 square foot ground floor tenant recreation space, but this would be reduced to 20,000 square feet of residential use, producing a building of, again, 5 stories, 27 units of housing with 7 at MIH option 1. Important to note that the R6B option produces a building which is similar in height to the hotel, now a homeless hotel, south of the building on 147th Avenue. So again, as far as the bulk concern and overall height are concerned, this proposal mirrors those other buildings in the area. We also note that, as you will see from the other 2 alternatives, This is the last remaining alternative that produces MIH affordability. As pursuant to Article 2 of the zoning resolution, anything below R6B is not mapped with MIH. So we did provide the council member with two other alternatives, the R5D and the R5B. The R5D producing a 4-story building with 24 units of housing, and the R5B a 3-story building with 16 units of housing. You know, as you go to the lower buildings and the fewer units, you run into some significant challenges. Again, Kevin has only provided us an estimate of the remediation costs at the site at $800,000. This may and probably has gone up over the last 6 months. So we're now facing a position where we're coming somewhat close to an area where the building could potentially not be built in the extent additional bulk was not provided. We would also add that the 5D and 5B alternatives produce buildings that are now would be smaller than the adjacent building along 147th Avenue. So, you know, with that, obviously, I'm sure there are questions and people will look at the data, but this is the full range of options as were presented to Councilmember Brooks Powers. Next slide. So you see the additional materials which are provided. We provided renderings and plans with each of the options. Again, the original R6A presented on the upper left portion of the screen, dialing down to the R6B on the upper right portion, and then the R5D and R5B along the lower portion. Next slide. So this is a copy of the zoning map. And again, we're just going to lightly run through the land use map. And then, you know, Manish Sivani, the project architect, is here and can show the plans. This is the delineation of the zoning district boundary. Again, it would encompass the site and the 4 sites to the north of the property. So the site itself is roughly 10,000 plus square feet. Those additional sites also roughly 10,000 square feet. Next slide. It would also have the benefit of adding a commercial overlay. You can see the land use map here. And there is a real distinction between the manufacturing districts to the south and the residential districts to the north. Importantly, this corner itself is somewhat unique in having non-conforming commercial uses on the northwest corner and what amounted to be a parking lot / gas station on the northeast corner. So this corner has always been challenging. One of the reasons that we think that this application is merited and a rezoning here is merited is because you've got 2 80-foot wide streets that intersect at the property. This is seen as a hallmark of an opportunity to create density. We are not going deep into the R3T2 portion of the zoning map. You can see we're here on the edge of that district. You do have very good site access, and that usually, you know, is a sign that additional density is merited. So really, you got a tough site. You got a tough site in terms of remediation and a tough site in terms of what your surrounding uses are. Next slide. These are pictures of the site, again, in the interest of the council members' time. If you could just page through these pictures, you can see that the site itself, undeveloped, you know, not in the, you know, not just this site is not in great shape. You can see the homeless hotel across the street from the site in the lower left, and additional commercial uses. And again, just again to provide context, we sit roughly 1,100 feet, linear feet south of or adjacent to JFK. So challenging site, which has produced a lot of, you know, a lot of parking for airport parking and such. We include the original proposal, the R6A, and I think maybe Manish Sivani, the project architect, could merely just run through the distinctions between those. Manish, starting at the R6A, do you want to just run through very briefly what the distinctions are in these buildings as they page through the plans?
Thank you, Richard. This is Manish of MS Savani Architect PC, based out of Jamaica, Queens, and the architect for the project. What we're looking at currently is the site plan, which shows the attendant parking to the east and the building located on the northwest or northeast corner of the site. Slide, please. The cellar, which basically has the storage and the utilities. Nothing else. Next slide. The first floor has commercial spaces and community facility spaces and the residents' recreational space towards the back. and shows the basic attendant parking layout. Next slide. The floors, second to the third floor, which has a larger floor plate, with 8 units, a apartment mix noted on the lower left corner. Next slide. The 4th to the 6th floor, and then the 7th and the 8th floor, which kind of shows the entire layout. And here's the elevation for the original 8-story R6A building. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, next slide, please. Thanks. The alternative. Okay, that was quick. The R6B. It's basically the same layout except for the bulk has been changed. The site plan's the same amount of parking, and the location of the building. Cellars, it's the same exact as the original R6A. The first floor layout is typically the same, and the upper floors, next slide, please. Second and third floor, we made no changes, and yeah, third floor, a smaller unit layout because of the setbacks and the square footage. The 5-story elevation, yep. Didn't realize. So next slide, please. We still maintain the parking at the on the east side, and the building bulk is still the same. Just the height has been reduced. We kept on reducing the size, the height of the building as the zones went down. Cellars, you will notice, it's the same layout, same as the first floor. Has been kept the same. And the next slide, yes, the second and the third through fourth is the same exact with 8 units each. So the R5B, next one. Next slide, please. Yeah, the last alternative here, the size has changed. But the building is a 3-story with 11 parking in the back. No more attendant anymore. It's self-parking. Next slide. It's been kept the same for accessory users. The layout of the commercial and the community facility has been slightly modified as the size of the building has changed. There are only 3 units on the first floor. Commercial and community facility, and the second and third are the same with 8 units each on the floors. That would result in 16 units. And that's a much smaller building.
So, thank you, Manish. So with that, we just close with AMIs, which in this building, based upon option 1, would produce 60% AMIs. At the family size intended for the building, you'd have income ranges between 50,000 and 64,000 to 71,000. Next slide. And then the rents would be between 956 upwards through 1653, with 10% of the building being at 598 for studio through 1,000 for a 3-bedroom. And I think it's important that we close with this, considering why we're here and why we're often here for rezonings, which is that with the inclusion of mandatory inclusionary housing, we address issues as are raised by the community. And when I say that, not merely by members of the community who are at the community board or who speak, but also those who don't speak and may not have a voice. And that in this community is particularly prevalent. When we look at the census data for the last 10 years, you're looking at an increase in the number of households by 11%, while there's a median household income, which is decreased by 16%. All of this results in per capita income decreases, increased housing with a decrease in vacancies. This is all related to housing pressure. And here that is particularly prevalent given that the occupied housing units and what is termed to be overcrowding has increased by, from roughly from 67 units to roughly 117 units. So a rather marked increase. And this is basically how many families are occupying fewer units, how many units are now occupied with more than 1 occupant per room. There's a housing crisis. The housing crisis, in accordance with these demographics, has hit this area hard. It would be a shame to not produce, first of all, housing at this area, in this area, and second of all, affordable housing to address some of these dire needs as expressed by the census data. So with that, again, and with thanks to the Councilmember Brooks Powers for for hosting many of these conversations. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Just a few couple questions before I pass it to Majority Whip Brooke Powers. Could you confirm how many affordable housing units will be created by the proposed project?
Chair, that's difficult at this point. So what I would instead say would be that under the two scenarios, including the one which was approved by city planning and the one at an R6B, those being the two scenarios that would actually produce affordability in accordance with MIH. In the R6A scenario, you would have 45 total units, of which 11 would be affordable, and that's at option 1. And then under the R6B alternative, you would have 27 units produced, of which 7 would be affordable at option 1. Of course, in the event option 2 were selected, you would have a slight increase in those number of units, roughly 14 for the R6A option and roughly 10 for the R6B option.
Thank you. Is the height of an R6A building consistent with the surrounding neighborhood?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I mean, it produces an 8-story building under this scenario. We were able to reduce the height of that building to the extent that we added additional floor area and made the building envelope more squat. But we do arguably think that it's important to produce a building of this size. When you look at precedent in the area, there is not a lot of 8-story precedent in the area. You have 5-story buildings. Further afield, you have taller buildings, but in the immediate area, you don't. And it's kind of just a question of what you do on this site and whether or not the density is appropriate, not merely for the existing context, but also on a going forward basis. The reason we think that it is, and the reason we argued for it, was because this is one of those rare sites in the area where you do have the opportunity for transportation. You do have 2 80-foot wide streets, and really kind of where you want to locate your housing. We talked in other applications of 100-foot wide boulevards and avenues. We don't have that here in this area of Queens, but as far as this area goes, this is where you would want to put additional density. And hopefully we're getting something here, maybe not at an 8-story building.
Thank you so much. I would now like to turn it over to Majority Whip Brooks Powers to see if she has any questions for this panel.
Thank you so much again, Chair Riley and Mr. Lavelle. I just want for you to discuss a little bit more the feasibility of the alternatives that you provided. What would the developer build? Well, more so, what are the economic implications for each that you see with the alternative?
Sure. So in essence, what I like to say sometimes is that it's less that we're seeking a rezoning and more that we're seeking a project and really a feasible project. So here, we've looked at 4 options. And the lowest of those is the R5B. The R5B scenario in this presentation has community facility use, which shows what the maximum square footage could look like under that scenario. As far as the applicant and their calculations, however, this would not produce a financially feasible scenario. It would be insufficient to allow what here is going to amount to be costly cleanup, upwards of, as we calculated, likely a minimum of $800,000. So despite the breakdown of the uses presented, first of all, the R5B would be unlikely to produce anything other than residential use. So you'd probably have a fully residential building. But even with that, and with that scenario, I don't think it gets built at an R5B, and that's basically just a fact of the matter and what's supported by the numbers. So with regards to the other scenarios, and obviously this is part of our ongoing conversations. The R6B building is the lowest district required inclusionary, and so both the R5D and R5B don't produce any affordable units pursuant to MIH. So it's complicated because there are competing goals here. One is you don't want a building that's 8 stories, understood. You want a building that produces affordability. It becomes a shorter building, but you can still do it. And then once you go to the R5B option, we don't think that would produce a building at all. So what we're looking at as far as feasibility is an R6B if you want the affordability and an R5D if you don't. With regards to the bulk of the building, again, the building at an R5D is lower than, and an R6B is at the height of the building across 147th Avenue.
Now, you're just really quickly, because you're saying that the R6B likely would have nothing built there, but my understanding,
the R5B, I'm sorry.
The R5B. But my understanding from our last conversation was if that was built, it would either be townhomes or like a plaza of retail. So are you saying that you guys have come to the conclusion that those are no longer an option?
I would actually have Dharminder Singh weigh in if you'd like to. Dharminder, I know that you've looked most closely at the numbers. It's whether or not the R5B would produce sufficient development to counter the costs of remediation and to actually build a building.
Yeah, we run by some financials on the building and go by that course and construction costs going in, all the construction costs going like 30% up in the material and everything. And the way looking at to produce this, and it's not come up to the financing on the banking. We need to get some financing on that building to do the construction. And we run by some financial institution, and they completely denying with the revenue going to be produced at that on the cost. And the way it looked like it will, might we have to sit on it? If it's not, we're not getting any blessing from that neighborhood or the council member or the board. And our plan is now to we're looking at, the goal was to produce housing, affordable housing here too. And we had some statement and some from the bank and some commitments for financials based on that when we start this project. And I think the way they're running up to 5D it does make sense to do it, but there's no affordability in building height. But incentive on that 421, if we had to go through that, the construction, providing some affordability, and it would make sense on that more to go towards the R6B. That's our plan, and that's what all the financials decision, and to making towards the bankers and all we're looking at.
Yeah, because as I've said in past conversations, when you purchased this lot, you knew what the zoning was. And so, and my understanding was that you were open to even like the retail, which was your initial plan for that lot. But I'd also like to know if the developers have made any further contact with the community since our most recent discussion and what that has been.
Yes, I am. We are contacting all that the neighbors and in the area and asking for see what is feasible, what they want to see in there, and what development and what the demands are. And I believe we are getting a lot of support from the immediate neighborhood, like block around and few blocks around an area, and people want to see that development. And that's just general feedbacks. I think we will try to get if any petition need to be submitted, and come with the neighborhood, all the petitions. If we can bring the petitions like to the people immediate neighborhoods, what they want. They really want to see because we own this property 6 years, more than 6 years now, and we are very familiar with that neighbors. And I live actually in community. Like my 50 years in that community board. I was not a member of community board, but I was in that community living in that district. And
you said you lived in the community. I know you mentioned that before. What part of the community did you live?
I live on Queens Village, in Queens Village area.
So that's not in this community.
Not in this community, community board. In the community, it's in community board. Yeah, it's up and down, and that's where my community board's members are, and they all living that far from that area, and they're not seeing that needs in that area. They are most of the community board members, and they're not adjacent to this property. Maybe some of them, but the needs in the area, if you Google it or anywhere in the rental or any rental market there, the prices are skyrocketing on that. It's not affordable. And people, what I was talking to even to the neighbors when I go by the area, and rentals, families are getting bigger, and people they're seeing they are moving to other finding opportunity in other affordable, like going to Brooklyn because there's more building built there, going to Long Island City, applying for that in that lottery system. And people are aware of this, and they want to see their loved one in the area. If they can move to the area and they have some kind of opportunity, and they see that if this corner will be built, maybe the community facility, they can have some kind of medical needs or some other kind of for daycare centers, which can be more, give to the community and fulfill their needs. And I also I will see that objection community board had it here, which personally I didn't like it because they were saying there's a shelter. Why is the shelter there? Why people there are in shelter? Because they couldn't afford that affordable house. And I'm completely against as a human, as if there's a shelter, and we cannot discriminate that. There's already shelter there in the area. The shelter is for the people, for us, The people they're not affording the housing, and they're just going to shelter. They're looking for the affordable opportunity to go in their housing. I have other buildings somewhere, and has one apartment for rent. Believe me, there's so many people approaching for that, just one apartment, little apartment.
You're absolutely right. There's been a housing crisis in New York City for many years. But if you understand the layout of Southeast Queens, you would know that Southeast Queens has been the location and continues to be a location with substantial supportive housing developments have been built there, in addition to the homes that are already there. And so we're trying to be able to balance that out and as well. And I invite you, we're doing the town hall coming up. I invite you and Mr. Lobel and Manish to also join and speak on behalf of the project further in another platform, which is not only the community board, but the members of that immediate community, because what I've been hearing from people in that immediate area is it's a lot of congestion over there, and the infrastructure does not support it. And so I also ask that you invite the people that you said that you spoke to in the immediate area that may be in support of it, because I want to make sure I'm hearing from everyone, but that's not consistent with what I've been hearing to date.
So definitely, if we need to come or demonstrate that the people they go in favorable votes, or people are they doing it, and I spoke to a couple of pastors in church in the area and stuff too. They're seeing the need there, but some people in the business sense, and also you'll see that that little strip there, 2 blocks strip there from the school to there, where that shelter is. That the stores are always vacant. There's no business because there's no moment there. There's no moment at all, and there's a couple stores there. They shut down, they close down because there's no business there. The businesses, the economy is disastrous on that block, and so if this is kind of built, and this will bring to that nature with the more people activities, and encourage the business and economy of this area. And also we are not now we're seeking at the same height as the hotel next door we had. It's just right across from us. It's like 53 feet height. And also the school on that little north of our building. The school is also 4-story plus the bulkhead, 5-story, which is like more than 60 or 65 feet high school building. So we're not just going to be pop up in the neighborhood and just a very high-rise building. So if that's something you can consider, or the committee can consider on this, this is just our appeal to you and the committee members.
Again, thank you for your comments. I look forward to continuing to engage to the point that we're able to find a space that's mutually acceptable between you and the community. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Majority Whip. I now invite my colleagues to ask questions. If you have any questions for this applicant panel, please use the raise hand button on the participant panel. Council, are there any council member questions?
Chair, I don't see any council member with questions at this time.
There being no further questions, the applicant panel is excused. Council, are there any members of the public who wish to testify on the 146-93 Guy R. Brewer Boulevard proposal?
Chair, we do have several members of the public here to testify, so I can call on the first panel. So the first panel will be, hold on, let me get the names. 1 second. Barbara Brown is the first panelist, so we can start with her and I'll call on the following names. Barbara, good to see you.
Members of the public will be given 2 minutes to speak. Please do not begin until the Sergeant at Arms has started the clock.
The time will begin.
Yes.
You may begin.
Good afternoon. So the proposed structure is non-conforming in height and character to the residential community. It would be taller than any structure in the vicinity. The homes, the shelters, the air cargo buildings just south of the site, and the local school. And you can see that from the slides that were shown a few minutes ago. As a resident, its proximity to JFK International Airport constitutes a non-compatible land use. And so putting a tower or putting any kind of residence really there is contradicts the FAA land use guidelines. And certainly to put a tower there, it would be against those guidelines. The proposed structure is also situated in a very active traffic corridor. The presentation made it sound like it's like a boulevard. Traffic is often at a standstill there. We're talking about single lanes in each direction. And so this proposed project would only worsen the condition of the already clogged streets there. On the street, parking is almost non-existent. And I understand that from the 6A, 6B, they're talking about stackable parking for residents. That would be totally unacceptable to the 1 and 2 family stories, 1 and 2 family homes immediately adjacent to the property. The site is also in the footprint of an old gas station, as was stated. So the community is looking for an appropriate R32 use of the site with perhaps a commercial overlay. And the landlord knew that it wasn't an R32 zone when he purchased it, so he should be willing to plan accordingly. To apply to build an 8-story tower at the site just so he can pay the expenses necessitated to remediate the brownfield is unacceptable. That R36 zone will essentially enable him to qualify for the low-income housing tax credits and other subsidies. So affordable comes a buzzword, which has not been proved as needed in that immediate area. ULURP application should be denied. It's placing an unfair burden on the community, the local community. And
thank you, Barbara. Chair, I can call on the next members of this panel. So the next people that we're going to hear from are Lonnie Glover, to be followed by William Perkins, to be followed by Felipe Ruiz. So Lonnie Glover is next.
Your time will begin.
Lonnie, can you unmute yourself? Sure, it looks like, oh, there we go. Can you say something, Lonnie? We're trying to see if you have sound. Okay, Chair, it looks like Lonnie Glover is having some issues, so we're gonna get back to him, but for now, I'm gonna call him William Perkins. Lonnie, we'll get back to you in a second.
Mr. Perkins,
Yes.
you may begin.
All right. Thank you. And I want to thank our council member for the opening remarks here. I'm Bill Perkins. I am part of the Rosedale Civic Association as well as the Eastern Queens Alliance. Just to let everybody know, the conglomeration of civics in Southeastern Queens are categorically against this development. We're looking to kind of maintain the character of our neighborhood, but recognize something has to go there, and we're willing to work with that. Let me comment on a couple of things that we've mentioned here. First of all, the hotel across the street from the proposed development is in a different zone. So, and then the school building is not, I wouldn't say in the same kind of structure that we're talking about here. We're talking about residential houses, and the proposed structure of R6A will be the largest development in Southeastern Queens, which, as our council member mentioned, our community is primarily single and two-family homes. We have been working as civics and working with our council members and elected officials, since we were made aware of this. I will tell you, we have not yet, neither the developer or council has really approached us to talk about, hey, how can we work together? Yet besides that, we have as a community come together and said, we do want something there. The proposed structure of being 65 or 75 feet is just, again, out of the character. So as Barbara Brown mentioned, who is the chair of the Eastern Queens Alliance, as well as a community organization here in Southeastern Queens, we would rather keep it as an R32. However, recognizing that the R5B would provide a little bit more housing space, that's something that the community was amenable to do. So I do want to make sure that the council is clear that the community is working through this, looking for something to be there, but that R5B would at least keep the structure at a height size, which is in the character of this particular community. Barbara did get into just the congestion, just that, there are a number of environmental factors. Congestion alone is significant. Because where they're proposing the parking space and where they're proposing, where you would egress, it's on a very trafficked area, and it's up the street from a major highway. So any given afternoon, you have difficulty already getting this community through that street. There are a number of issues regarding just the sewage and the work that we're doing with sewage, et cetera, that need to be taken into account. Again, we're willing to work with the developer, but we want to make sure that the developer is doing something in the character of this community. And we would ask that you've had council working with this with elected officials, but you have yet to come to any of our civic or community meetings to talk about what you're going to do. To me, don't do it to us, work with us. And if you want to work with us, work with a R5B at the most that preserves the character of the community and get something done. Thank you.
The next speaker on this panel, we can try to go back to Lonnie. Lonnie, can you unmute yourself?
Lonnie, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Your time will begin.
Lonnie, we could see and hear you. You could just begin. Maybe he can't hear us. Okay. Council, do you want to move on to the next applicant? We'll come back and try him again.
Yeah, we'll come back to Lonnie. So the next speaker on this panel is Felipe Ruiz.
Your time will begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think that Lonnie would be able to actually address some key points. I think that one of which was the chemicals that were left over by the gas station. I don't think that anything has been said regarding exactly how they propose to clean that lot up. Secondly, I think that Ms. Brown and the other members have addressed this matter quite eloquently. I rise in opposition to this program in that it's going to lead to a lot of congestions, a lot of negative conditions that are clearly visible. And if the individuals or the principals of this project have ever taken the time to adventure and spend time in the location, they will come to the conclusion, which is something that is so easy. And I'm communicating this discussion from other members of my community, that this location, it is not a prime nor a perfect location for anyone seeking to have a place to come home and rest and find that place to be a home. It's completely congested. There is heavy traffic. We're suffering in this area in the vicinity where I currently live, with a tremendous amount of heavy 18-wheeler traffic that is the direct response to FedEx and other locations to the airport, and principally because Amazon and FedEx have utilized this particular structure located on 146th Avenue and 147th Road in this area, Springfield Boulevard, as the center for distribution. So I can only imagine that adding additional footwork in that location and traffic is going to lead to a complete nightmare to what is already a very difficult situation for single-family homes and residents of this location. I reside in an area where senior citizens have resided and lived in this area for the past 60 years. They're civic servants and they deserve their peace and quiet. They have retired, they have worked hard for their homes. And I think that it is in the interest of those individuals to bring about the discussion to us and to present to us exactly the kind of project that is going to basically preserve what we want to preserve in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Felipe. Lonnie, we're going to try one more time. See if we can hear you. We can see you.
It's not working. Please check. Hang on.
We can hear you now, Lonnie.
We can hear you.
I know, man. I know. Why did it cut out on me when I need it?
Good afternoon, Lonnie. Are you ready to present?
Damn. Come on.
Lonnie, we can hear you.
Say, Bill. Bill? Come on.
Okay.
Because of his technical difficulties, is there a way that if maybe one of the other members, I think he may be talking to Mr. William Perkins, if he can come off mute and maybe go on speakerphone while they talk?
Yeah, I'm gonna suggest that. Hold on one second. Mr. Perkins, are you in contact with Lonnie?
Yes, Chair, I am. I let him know that we could hear him. He just couldn't hear us. So if you let me call him back, I'll let him speak. Oh,
I think he's talking now. Hold on. Oh God.
Well, now he's on mute. So Mr. Perkins, if you can just go on the phone with him and put him on speaker so that he can then present that way.
Yeah, we'll work with that technology, Council Member. We'll get it done. Hold on for a second.
Oh, I feel bad. He's doing the entire presentation right
now. I think that's why he's not answering you, Mr. Perkins, because he's talking.
Yeah. Okay.
So, Council, do we have any more members of the public who wants to testify?
No, Lonnie would be our last one, and he's talking.
Right, so
we just can't
It looks
hear
like
him.
Mr. Perkins is signaling.
Yeah, what I was saying, everyone, he has a written statement, testimony that he's put in, and I don't know if it can be read, but he does have his testimony, which is the primary thesis of his update today.
Okay, no problem.
So, Mr. Perkins, we can tell him to submit the testimony, Barbara, if you're listening to us, land use testimony at council.nyc.gov. So, so if we could just get it from him in writing, it will be put into the record.
Okay, absolutely. We'll follow up as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
No problem, Majority Leader.
Chair, there's no more members to testify, and I don't know if the majority whip wants to say anything else because I see her hand is still up.
Majority Whip, did you want to give any last remarks regarding this project?
When they were talking, I had wanted them to highlight the communities that they represent, because I know it was made a statement in terms of not being from the immediate area. But I will say that both Lonnie Glover and Barbara Brown reside in the immediate community in Springfield Gardens, where this project would go up. So I did want to highlight that. And the other questions I had, they pretty much answered in their remarks in terms of what they'd like to see. And you know, thank you for the opportunity to have this another platform to move the conversation forward.
Anytime. Thank you, Majority Whip. There being no other members of the public who wish to testify on pre-considered LUs related to ULIPs numbers C 200-246 ZMQ and N 200-247 ZRQ relating to the 146-93 Guy R. Brewer Boulevard rezoning proposal, the public hearing is now closed and the items are laid over. That concludes today's business. I would like to thank the members of the public, my colleagues, subcommittee council, land use, and other council staff, and Sergeant at Arms for participating in today's meeting. This meeting is hereby adjourned.